Right. A warm welcome to you all this evening. This evening's committee has a relatively short agenda, which should allow us to give some attention to the important topics being covered. We will be starting the main agenda with a training session on investment strategies setting before moving on to the discussion on climate target setting, TCFD reporting, before covering the pension fund report and accounts. We will then consider the fund's CMA objectives and quarterly report before ending the meeting on two key governance items: the fund training needs analysis and the new TPR simple code. Before we begin the main agenda, we can please cover the administrative items, starting with apologies for absence. I've not apology for absence not received. Lateness, Councillor Walker, and we have attending remotely Councillor Trapton, Councillor Adebayo Henry, and Councillor Ayos. And before we go to the main agendas, declaration of interest and declaration of interest.
Not about interest, actually. Just is Councillor Gordon not here? Because surprised she's not here, or said she's going to be late. She's not. All right.
There's no message so far. Any declaration of interest by members or officers or declaration of interest?
I'm very interested in everything.
Sorry?
Very interested in everything.
Are you a member of pension committee? Are you a pensioner? Do you have a LGPS pension or something?
I'm a pensioner.
You have LGPS, yeah? Right. Okay. All right. Anybody else? Any declaration? Any other declaration? Okay. Before we move on to the main agenda, we've got Councillor Benin Lubbock online, and he's got some questions that he wants to ask. So if it's online, then Councillor Lubbock, if you're online, Benin Lubbock, if you're online, please ask your question.
Can you hear me? I was just going to ask, having looked at the papers, how could retaining investments in fossil fuel companies or aviation and aerospace companies constitute targeting real economy decarbonisation? So obviously we spoke last time about the difference between decarbonising the pension pot and decarbonising the real economy, and I just wanted to ask, how would retaining investments in fossil fuel companies and aviation achieve that real world and real economy decarbonisation? Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor. So I believe the paper refers to real world economy decarbonisation and the need, if we are going to pursue that path, to potentially retain higher emitting companies and sectors. So I think the key differential I draw there really is that in referring to higher emitting companies and sectors, we are not simply looking at fossil fuel extraction and aviation companies. We are looking an awful lot wider at materials companies, at industrials, at essentially a huge proportion of the market. What we're trying to look at is if we say we are no longer prepared to invest in these higher emitting sectors, then they comprise a very significant part of the market, and potentially we are then considerably reducing our investment universe. And in doing so, we reduce the diversification of the fund, we change the risk return profile, and potentially that's then to the detriment of returns, which is then clearly to the detriment of the council and other employers, who will then need to pay higher contributions to make up that difference in performance. So by high emitting, we're not intending to focus narrowly on fossil fuel extraction companies. It's very much about maybe trying to shift the focus away from necessarily focusing always on the portfolio's emissions, and looking more broadly at real world impact. So I hope that helps to answer your question.
Could I have
Councillor Penny
follow-up?
Lubbock. If you got any more questions, or
Yeah,
are you
just
happy
sort
with
of
the answers?
following up on that point, really. I mean, I was asking specifically about the fuel companies and aviation because I've yet to receive an answer to my question for the last pensions committee about how much investments there are in primarily fossil fuel trading companies, extraction, etc. And it kind of speaks to that wider picture of those high carbon industries. How does retaining those investments help reduce in the long term and help have a real world impact in terms of reaching net zero and protecting the environment and our planet?
So we do retain some exposure to fossil fuel extraction companies. It is relatively small. Ours is a fairly low emitting portfolio. So I apologise. I apologise for not providing you with an answer earlier. The proportion of companies whose sort of primary business is fossil fuel extraction is around 2% of the portfolio, so it is relatively low. The other parts of your question will take a little bit longer. So I apologise for that, and we will be in touch. We will be in touch with you to talk about providing a more detailed answer. In terms of how exposure to these particular companies can help promote real world decarbonisation, it is something we will look at in the longer term review of our strategy. In terms of the companies that we hold now, some of them likely genuinely will. So we do hold a couple of energy companies that are clearly transitioning, away from pure fossil fuel extraction, looking at renewables such as biofuels, and those parts of the business comprise a very significant proportion of their revenues. So you're not looking at a sort of a small section of renewables tagged along the side. These are companies that are genuinely making a shift. There are others within our portfolio where in the longer term we may decide those are not suitable. But I hope that helps to answer your question. As I said, the focus in terms of the high emitting companies really is not intended to be limited to fossil fuel extraction and aviation. It goes much wider than that. The big contributors to our emissions frankly are not fossil fuels. Fossil fuel extractors comprise a proportion of those companies, but by far a larger proportion is materials companies, industrials. We have a hotel company that has tremendously high carbon emissions. The sectors that they come from are very, very varied. And essentially, our view is that we should not be looking to remove these companies from the portfolio simply because their carbon emissions are high.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out that biofuels are not necessarily actually a progressive renewable energy source, and I just wanted to make it clear to the pensions committee that when being told that we're looking to decarbonize in the real economy, the detail really needs to be there for that to be more than just a sort of a top line when those companies and those high carbon emitting companies are still in the portfolio. So I was just looking for a bit more meat on the bones for that assertion, and obviously 2% of our pensions pot, which is a large pot, is still quite a lot of money that's being invested in there. So thanks for your answers, and I look forward to more conversations in the future. Thank you.
Cheers, thank you, and we will be in touch with a more detailed written response. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Benilobok. So you can log off now. Thank you. Thank you. That's a log off.
Oh, he's gone. I thought he was a member.
No, it's not.
Oh, right, okay.
It's a log off.
Yes.
Okay. Now we can return back to the
Chair, could I just say thank you to the officer for her reply? And it's unfortunate that the councillor has left, because I think he needs to be reminded that, you know, this is a pension fund, and that we have to also bear in mind that we are responsible to the pensioners for what happens, and that we are in fact doing an excellent job and quite a leading councillor in decarbonisation. So I'm not very happy somebody is coming back telling us, you know, what we should do, when in fact they don't really know what they're talking about, quite frankly, beyond, you know, they're talking about outside in the real world. Well, we have to live in the real world as well, but we also, and that part of that is about being responsible to those who are actually going to benefit from the pension fund, both now and in the future. So
Thank you. I agree.
Thank you to the officer for the answer.
Thank you, officers. The search is thank you. So thank you, Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I just think it's just worth thank again to Rachel Calvin for the answer there. But just I think it's worth emphasising that in this matter, this fund, you know, has a record which stands up to actually anybody in the local government pension field, and I'd say second to none. Actually, we were the first, you know, still one of the very few councils that set a target for you know, reducing our fossil fuel exposure over a 6-year period. We did in 2016, and by the time we got to the end of that period, we busted our target massively, having you know, aimed for a 50% reduction and ended up with a 97% reduction. I stand to be corrected on that, but a huge reduction. And as I said, I know of no other local government pension fund that has done anything like that in terms of setting a target, being publicly accountable for it all the way through that process, and achieving a fantastic objective on our journey to net zero. You know, so we're now about to embark on our next stage of that. We'll probably be hearing more about that later in this committee and future meetings coming. And I'm sure, you know, if there's anything to do with the members of this committee, we'll be up there amongst the premier local government funds in this area for a few years to come, and hopefully not too many years, because we're going to make our target. And obviously, and I'll just second also Councillor Rathbone's point is that in doing all of this, we've always been fully conscious of our need as a pension fund to, you know, our primary responsibility to meet pension payments for our members, past and present, when they become due. And, you know, and we've achieved that. We've managed a really impressive investment performance over the same period as our carbon performance. So we're now, the last report was substantially funded, and I think you know, we've got every reason to be pleased with ourselves, but not complacent, as we look forward to the next stage of this journey. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. I agree with you totally. I agree with all what you said. So, but maybe I will just try to remind Councillor Benilobok not to make the habit of get crashing to the pension committee meetings all the time. Maybe once in a while it's all right, but this is second time in a row. So I'll remind him that if he's got any questions, you can forward it to Rachel or somebody to answer the questions. Thank you. So we can.
Chair, I could say about that, because I was a bit disturbed that he came in. I thought actually mistakenly that he was actually a member of the committee, and I just think he's a councillor. He can always write emails to the Director of Finance and the rest of the team if he needs answers. He doesn't have to come here and start doing that. I do think there's a bit of a showmanship thing rather than actually really seeking information, because then he'd get a proper answer and then he'd have a proper dialogue about the whole situation.
I agree with you, but like I said, I'll let him know that he can just come when he feel like, so if he's got any questions, he can actually send a written questions to officers. Right. Let's come back to our original agenda. So we move now to agenda item 3, which is consideration of the minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any matters arising from the minutes? So the minute is from page 7 to 12 on the agenda. So 1 minute to look at it if there's any matter arising from the minutes. If not, can we agree the
There's a
minutes?
member trying to speak, Mr. Colthurst.
Hello?
Harry, yes.
Yeah, no, sorry, Chair, I want to echo just 2 things. One, in terms of the minutes, I've got a T after my L in my name. I just wonder if that could be corrected in future. It's not the first time it's happened. I know I'm only an employer representative here, but I just want to echo the points made by the last 2 councillors. And Rob's comments about the performance of this fund in terms of being climate friendly are absolutely spot on. And I think that should not be forgotten. This is a pension meeting. It's not a political meeting, and so that I agree also with that earlier point. I just think people, it's no point showboating. This is a serious pension committee. We have fiduciary responsibilities. I think we're all conscious of the need to try and make these funds as climate friendly as possible, and I think Hackney should be proud of its progress. It's really irritating when I come in here as an external to find ourselves being sort of ticked off for some some pointless comments, but twice running. And so I just want to make that point clear. So I do hope you can tell other councillors that this is a pensions committee. It's not a political lobby. Thank you.
Very well said. Right. Can we agree the minutes of the meeting held on the 22nd November 2022 as contained within the agenda pack?
Agreed.
Thank you. Thank you. Now we move on to agenda item 4, training investment strategy, which is on page 15 to 18. This training session will be delivered by Jill Davis and Sam Yandul. Sorry if I got your name wrong. I'm not really good at name pronunciation. From Reddington, and we covered the key consideration when setting the fund investment strategy. This is one of the most important roles the committee carries out, so it is vital that all members fully understand their duties. The training has been informed by the survey completed by members in the last couple of weeks. I would like to thank everyone who has contributed to that. I would like to invite Jill and Sam from Reddington to deliver the investment strategy. Thank you. Up to you.
Chair, could I just intervene? I think Councillor Hayhurst has his hand up. Just come in. No, it's all right. I'll keep telling you.
All right. Councillor Ayos.
So sorry, Chair, I got cut off before. Just to simply say on the minutes, I was here at the last meeting virtually, just to ask that to be amended. Thank you.
Jill and Sam.
Thank you.
Slides that you want to display.
Just to highlight, just to flag, Chair, we ought to be moving into exempt session for the training. Perfect. Yes, perfect.
The exempt session that the press and the public be excluded from the proceeding of the committee during the consideration of the exempt item, which is item agenda 4, training. And on the ground that it's likely, in view of the nature of the business to be transacted, that when members of the public be present, there will be a disclosure of exempt business as defined in paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the local. So thank you. Member of public, can you please exclude yourself? And the press.
Chair, sorry.
is contained within the supplementary paper. So is it Rachel? Are you interested? Yeah, thank you.
Yes, it is. First, also, can I just check that we've, I think we should now be returned to public session. We are perfect. No, that's fine. Thank you. So this report sets out fund assessment under the Competition and Markets Authority's objectives for investment consultants. So essentially, the CMA order requires us to undertake certain compliance processes in respect of our investment consultants. So one of them is that we cannot appoint an investment consultant without agreeing a set of performance monitoring objectives for them. So given that we have recently changed investment consultant, this report firstly ensures that we have achieved that part. What we're also required to do is then use those objectives to assess performance on an annual basis. So what we've also provided in the supplementary appendix is a report setting out performance of our previous consultant over the past year. So essentially, this report looks to make sure that we're compliant with the requirements of the order. If the committee can agree on that basis that we are, we'd like to ask you to approve the submission of our compliance statement to the CMA. Normally, this is due by I think it's the 7th of January each year, and we have written to the CMA explaining the timing of our committee. And they have granted us an exemption to essentially the end of this week to submit the compliance statement to them. So if there are any questions, please do let me know. Otherwise, can I ask the committee, as per the recommendations, to agree the objectives, note the performance assessment over 2022, and then approve the submission of the compliance statement to the CMA.
Yes, any question on that, members? Yes, no, any question? Councillor Chapman? No? Okay. Okay. So now, if there's no questions, then the pension committee is recommended to agree the objective as set out in Appendix 1 for the fund's investment consultant during 2023. We agree? Yeah, we are recommended to note the assessment of the performance against the objectives set out in the supplementary appendix. Noted. And then the last one is approve the submission of compliance statement to CMA. We approve that. Thank you. Then swiftly move to agenda item 7, quarterly update report. Can I invite Michael to introduce the report? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, as usual, I think we'll take most of this as read. There is one important element in the report which required an update, which was the funding update that I said in the report would be delivered verbally. So basically, this a roll forward from the March valuation, which, as has already been discussed tonight, was at 106%. The funding level as at the 30th of September is actually 122%, mainly as a result of, well, there's a reduction in the asset value because of market volatility of around about 180 million. However, the liabilities have actually fallen by nearly 400 million. That's obviously a result of the turbulence on the bond market, etc., and much stronger yields there. So that's as at September. As I say, it's likely to have, well, it will have certainly have moved again since then, given what's happened over the last 3 or 4 months. So that's the update on that. As I say, the rest I'll take as read, and any questions really.
Councillor Ayers?
It may be not for now, but maybe on another occasion, just a quick training as to how that level of volatility on the bond market actually ends up being to our advantage on a funding level. I mean, it may be that it just requires a sort of a few slides at a future date, but I just don't fully understand how the two are linked at the moment.
Okay, we could do some a quick training at the next committee maybe on that element.
Any questions? Nope. Right. The pension committee is recommended to know the report. Noted. All right, thank you. We move to agenda item 8, knowledge and skill policy, training needs analysis, page 95 to 98. Can I invite Karen to introduce the report? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Good evening, everyone. Most of you will remember that the Hackney Pension Fund has a knowledge and skills policy, and this is based on a number of requirements, one of which is CIPFA, the Chartered Institute of Public Finance and Accountancy, requirements on those who manage local government pension schemes, but also there are some legal requirements as well, particularly in relation to investment decision making, which basically provides a bar for the level of knowledge you should have sitting on the committee. We recognise that a lot of you have joined the committee quite recently, and there's been quite a change actually, particularly over the last 4 years. So as part of the policy and also to meet the professional requirements, every now and again we carry out what's called a training needs analysis, and that will help identify where there are gaps in the knowledge of the committee so that a training plan can be put into place going forward. So we do recognise that there has been quite a range of training. For some of you it might have been quite daunting, others of you that have been in the committee for a while or who have other knowledge may have felt more comfortable with it. So this will be a really useful opportunity to identify where maybe some refresher training or fuller training might be required. So we'll be issuing an online questionnaire to fill in, which basically will be a bit daunting when you see that in itself, because the CIPFA requirements are set into 8 subject areas, and within each there's on average probably about 10 topics within those. So there'll be a lot of descriptions of what you should know, or I would say relatively high level descriptions, and what we're asking you to do is just basically say, do you feel you're comfortable in that area, or would you like some further training? So we do expect that some of the subject areas, like maybe after today, investment strategy, or maybe some of the RI elements, you might be feeling a bit more comfortable but still need a bit more. Some of you that have been through it will be feeling a lot more comfortable and say, that's fine, I don't need any more. So please do not feel worried if you find that there's a whole area where you're just going, I actually do not understand any of that and I just want to have fuller training. So do not be put off by that, and do be honest when you complete it. So as I say, hopefully we'll get that out towards the end of January, subject officers doing the final sign off of it. Because it is quite long, we suggest it's probably going to take maybe 30 to 40 minutes to complete, and you do need to do it in one go. So it's not one of these lovely things that you can start and then go back into 2 days later. You do need to do it in one sitting. But we'll give you 3 weeks to complete it if you don't mind, but we really would request that you fill it in. Once we've done that, we'll come back, develop a training plan, and we've been speaking to the chairman tonight just about how training can be delivered in the future to make it helpful to you. And we'll be able to prioritise it as well in line with the committee's agenda, but still focusing on some of the training sessions that you get at committee in the way that we've done tonight with, for example, the investment strategy training. Okay, so it's just really for you all to note that, and for me to plead that when it does come out, if you can fill it in, and if you've got any problems filling it in, please do get in touch. Councillor Chapman?
Councillor Chapman?
If I may.
Thank you very much. That's excellent. I just would just ask about the actual method of delivery of training, and people who've been on this committee a while will know that there have been many animated discussions about this over the years. You know, because issues about not really one size doesn't really fit all, and the time is limited for all of us, and comments about delivering more online, and issues like that. I wondered, had we, I mean, because all those issues that we discussed in the past are still live, I'm sure. I just wondered if we'd put any thought to that and how we might, you know, adapt the way we've been delivering training in the future.
Yes, I had a conversation with Karen earlier on about that. So which I suggested that we should have a portal or like hub whereby people can go back to refresh their memory if they need to refresh anything, and the training to be like we have online training and we have face-to-face. I like face-to-face. I told her I like face-to-face, you know, because I like face-to-face. So, you know, so I think she's kind of mindful of that, you know, because we have, you know, at least about 10 minutes conversation about that we need, people need to go back to be able to go back and reflect their memory if they need to. So there will be a portal where we put all sort of, so there'll be a portal whereby we put any useful information. People can go there and just do it at their own time. Does that make sense, Karen?
Yes, absolutely, Chair. Yes, I had. So when we deliver training, we can make sure that recordings are taken. So we still get that face-to-face interaction, but then if someone wasn't available to actually attend, they can actually still look at the recording, and also it's available as refreshers going forward. Yes, recognising there'll probably still be a bit of a mixture of different types of training available, and also perhaps a bit more focus on keeping an eye on what's available wider, so that we can actually highlight to you if there was an event that we actually think would be more useful for you to also attend as either individually or a group of you as well. Thinking about opportunities there.
Other question for Karen? Any comment or anything? If not, I will only, you know, suggest that the questionnaire, if you can make it as simple as possible, so that people don't get bogged down or get put off not filling it in. So that would be very useful, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Absolutely, Chair. Thank you.
Ben?
I'm already put off filling it in. You know, half an hour on 8 areas, 10 questions. You've got, you know, we get 30, 40 emails a day, casework. It's just unrealistic. So I think rethought needs to happen now, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
If there's
For
no,
me, Chair, can I maybe open it up to the committee? Your policy does say that you will do it every 2 years. We haven't done it for a while, but actually, if it's much better to do it at a time that suits the committee and have it completed by all of you than do it at a time that doesn't suit you and not getting it completed by hardly anyone, particularly given the change in committee. So if you prefer, sorry, I'm looking to officers and hoping that they agree with the suggestion that we could actually defer it a few months if that would be more advantage to you.
It was more the format.
As long as you do actually suggest a time that would work for you, so that we're not putting it off indefinitely, Chair.
But it's more the format was my concern, Chair, that such a lengthy document is just almost, it's counterproductive.
Sorry, if I may, Chair. This is a very difficult one because it's almost laid down by professional standards, the areas that you do need knowledge in. So we can simplify it as much as possible. But if we turn around and say, for example, investment strategy, without maybe saying understanding what risk and reward means, then we're not going to get a true understanding of do you actually really understand it. And also the professional guidance, for some areas it says you should have a detailed knowledge, for other areas it says a high level knowledge. So again, we can't just give one high level topic, but it's effectively the same question, but just the thing that changes is the list, is the information that you're expected. So I'm talking about sentences which maybe have 10, 15 words in it that describe the topic, and you then have to say, yes, I've got the knowledge, or no, I need more training. So it's a list of things like that.
Thank you.
I think we're probably trying to already make it as simple as possible, given the professional guidance. The other alternative is, I think, something that we did try in the past, where if it's easier to have a conversation with you, but at the end of the day, we still need to go through the topics to understand them, unfortunately. But I'm more than flexible to try and do it in a way that suits each of you individually. Subject officer's been happy.
Thank you. If there's no further comments, then the pension committee is recommended to know the report. Thank you. Now we moving on to agenda item 9, TPR, new single code, updated introduction, page 99 to 102. Can I invite Karen to introduce the report? Thank you.
Thank you again, Chair. I'll keep this really brief. The pension regulator has a code of practice at the moment that's specific to public service pension schemes. That is about to be replaced by a new code of practice, which is going to have the real snappy name of the new single code, which is amalgamating a number of codes. It is due to be laid in Parliament in January, coming into force in March, and therefore we are suggesting to the committee that we don't do our regular compliance check on the old code, and we instead just defer that and wait till the new code comes out. So we'll probably take something back maybe around the summertime to you, where we train you on the new code and help you understand where we think we're complying with the new code, rather than focusing on something that's about to go out of date.
Thank you. Any questions on that? If not, I've got one. Mine is just, is there any financial implication with this new code?
With the new code, the financial implications, I think, will actually be on the administration costs and running of the fund. So a really good example is luckily something you're already doing in relation to you fully understanding your risk in areas such as your cyber resilience. So there is a cost of officers' time, of advisors' time in actually being able to investigate the cyber risk on the fund and make sure you've got the appropriate internal controls in place. So that's an example. So basically, it's just about, in the main, it's about making sure you're doing things properly to manage the risks of the funds and do things at a quality area. So you might see that there's more administration in adhering to the new code and evidencing your adherence to the new code. When we think about the cost of investments, actually what we're talking about here, the cost would be relatively small, or actually very small. But it is generally an administration cost, if that makes sense.
So this code is going to be web-based, is that right? Web-based?
It will be on the web with links that take you to all the sections, but we'll be able to pull it out in ways that's easier for you to look at. And we're currently working on a sort of compliance checklist, which means that we'll be able to present information to the committee at a high level so that you can focus on the areas that maybe there's exceptions in, rather than being too worried about the numerous areas that you're actually doing really well. So we'll try to make sure that information that's presented to the committee is as user-friendly as possible.
Thank you. The pensions committee is recommended to know the report. Can we know the report, please? I've not been advised of any AOB, so I'm moving swiftly to agenda item 11, exclusion of the press and public from item 12. That the press and public be excluded from the proceeding of this committee during consideration of the exempt item 12. So agenda item 12, consideration of the exempt minutes of the previous meeting.